All right, welcome to Endless Bullets. My name is Matt Swafford, and I am your host. And today I'm joined by my good friend Dean from Three Geeks and a Microphone, the podcast. Dean, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. We're a small podcast. Although thanks to you, you've been on a lot of our shows when we first started out, and we're just trying to grow. And I love work. I love doing this stuff with you. So let's do it.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate it. Well, thanks for being here. So today we are talking about Extreme Prejudice, the 1987 classic. Full disclosure, one of my favorite all-time movies. Definitely in my top 10. Criminally underrated. It's not perfect, not a perfect movie by any means. It is just boggles my mind how many people have never heard of this movie.
I was one of them. When you brought this up, I had never heard of this movie before. Because if I remember correctly, we were originally going to do this for our show.
Yep, it was the last one I was going to do with you guys before I started Endless Bullets.
I had to find a copy of it, and I'm like, why have I never heard of this or even seen this movie? So
yeah, it's I feel like it just kind of got buried for whatever reason. I know John Milius, the person that wrote it, or wrote the original story for it. He directed Conan, he directed Red Dawn. He was kind of a maverick in Hollywood, and he kind of got blacklisted. He is the character of Walter Sobchak from The Big Lebowski. Is based on John Milius.
Really? I didn't know that.
That character is basically a cartoon version of John Milius.
Oh, good Lord.
So yeah, he's very much in a lot of ways that guy, and he's just very kind of bombastic, and he kind of, because of a lot of his politics and things like that, he feels anyway that he kind of got rode out of Hollywood. But I feel like that might have something to do with it, but it's kind of an oddity. It's a strange movie to describe to someone.
It is. It's not a military movie, but it's not a Western either.
But it's also a modern Western, so it's
right. It's its own thing, and I know in some ways I think it helps it and it hurts it at the same time because it isn't clearly defined what it is.
Well, over the years, I've always explained this movie to people as it's like Lone Wolf McQuade and the A-Team joined forces to take down a drug dealer in Mexico.
Okay, I like that.
And that's my 30-second elevator pitch for it, where it's like, that's basically what it's about. That paints a good enough picture, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This movie came out in 1987. Do you know what the budget for this movie was?
I know it only grossed like, 11 million total, but
it grossed 11 million. The budget was 22 million.
22, here it is, yep.
Which is a moderately expensive movie for 1987, considering that there were no visual effects scenes in this film, or there's no special effects, I guess, other than gunfights and explosions.
Right.
Directed by Walter Hill, who was famous for doing the movie The Warriors, 48 Hours, Streets of Fire, Another 48 Hours, Red Heat, Last Man Standing, and he produced a lot of movies too. He produced the original 3 Alien movies.
Yep, I didn't know that until recently. I was looking him up, and I had no clue that he produced those. He started, was it Brandywine, just to do it. So,
and the story was written by, like we've already covered, John Milius, who directed Conan the Barbarian, Big Wednesday. He wrote Apocalypse Now. He wrote the Indianapolis shark story that Quint tells in Jaws. He wrote that part of Jaws.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, just that scene, and just a ton of other stuff. He's written a lot of stuff and worked on a lot of stories and scripts that he didn't get credit for, but he was kind of ever present in Hollywood. And I think he was a very good idea man. He was a good writer, a solid director, and he also, I want to say he produced some things too, but
Miami Vice, 1941. He wrote the story for 1941.
He wrote the episode of Miami Vice that was Viking Bikers from Hell.
Yep.
He also directed Flight of the Intruder. I have a special place in my heart for that movie because my uncle was a intruder pilot in Vietnam.
Really?
Yeah, he got shot down. He was flying intruders. Yeah, he was a POW for 5 years.
Wow.
So when that movie came out, I was all like, whoa, like I get to see, like they're showcasing the intruder, the A6. The movie stars Nick Nolte, who had done 48 Hours, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, North Dallas 40, a movie called Farewell to the King he did around the same time. And I feel like this was probably the height of his popularity. I feel like, a year or two later, he did Prince of Tides.
Yep.
And I want to say he was voted People's Sexiest Man Alive or whatever, either this year or the following.
I think it was the following year, because I don't know why, but I know he was still coming off 48 Hours, and he was big at this point. So I see what you mean, but it's kind of like what happened. I mean, he was there, and then all of a sudden,
he wasn't.
Right.
Well, I feel like he was kind of in a transitional part of his life for a leading man, because when he made this movie, I want to say he was 46, 47 years old.
Sounds right.
To be sexiest man alive at 48 or whatever, I mean, that's kind of the upper deck of your leading man time frame. I feel like after that, he had to kind of segue into other stuff to remain relevant. I mean, very few people can kind of keep that, like Sean Connery in his 60s and stuff like that. And they were still putting him with like 20-year-old girls.
Right.
And it just, after a while, it was kind of like, okay, she's going to fall in love with grandpa over here.
Oh.
So I feel like it was going into the 90s. I feel like he had to kind of get less actiony, less leading man, less romantic type roles, and he had to kind of go into some more dramatic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he went anywhere. I think he kind of disappeared into that ether,
That genre, right?
Yeah. Powers Booth.
I love Powers Booth.
He's a treasure. Yeah.
He's like this. You see him in a movie, right? I'm like, I know that guy. Who is he?
Yep.
And then, like, he was in Red Dawn, for example. He just has this swagger about him. I don't know if it's he's from Texas. Him and Nick Nolte are both Texans.
And Rip Torn. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's right. And it just comes across in everything he plays. It doesn't matter if he's a good guy, bad guy, whatever. It's there. And
he's got such a powerful, commanding voice.
Yes.
And when he plays up the southern, like the Texan part of it, I mean, it's just undeniable. But he can kind of scale that back too. He did a lot of voice acting for cartoon, and he voiced Gorilla Grodd in the Justice League cartoon.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not see that. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who has worked on losing his southern accent his whole life, I really appreciate that. But when he wants to, he can turn it on, and it's because he was in Deadwood. He was Cy Tolliver in Deadwood.
Yep.
And is so good in that, but he's less cowboy, and he's more saloon owner, kind of aristocrat.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he was in Tombstone as Curly Bill Brocious. One of the most memorable parts of that movie is him delivering those lines.
Yep. As the downed colonel in Red Dawn, it's just being an Air Force guy myself. Everything he says there is like spot on. I mean, the way he's so commanding in it. He's just, okay, anyone can play a pilot, down on the, you had to eject or whatever, but he brings it so differently, especially when she says, what's the capital of Texas? Austin. Wrong, it's Houston. And just that there alone just spells it out.
Come on, darling, I'm cold.
Right. Sorry.
I like what he says in that movie when they're asking, like, what happened, Colonel? How'd you get yourself shot down? And he was like, it was 5-1. I got 4. And that seems like a very kind of a swaggery, piloty thing to say too.
Oh, definitely.
Like you can totally I can imagine him like talking on the comm, on his headset, and just being like, "Roger that. This is 10-6-9er, and I got whores in the city over here." So yeah, he was just a great presence. And he, as this character, Cash Bailey, he's a cartoon of a white suit wearing, mustache twirling villain, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he pulls it off, and he does. With the material he has, I feel like he does really, really well.
I would agree. And
he plays drunken and like depressed. I mean, his whole arc in this is, I feel like he wants to die. Like, I mean, he either wants to die, or he wants to get rid of the only people in his life that kind of tie him to his old life.
Mm-hmm. When you first see him here in the white suit, in the hat, the little cock to the side, the first thing that always popped in my head was, Miami Vice meets a Western.
Yeah.
And it's like personified in the way he looks.
Well, I feel like when you see him in that white suit, and that's all he wears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, days go by. There's like a week that goes by in this film. He's always wearing the same thing. So I feel like as soon as you see him, it's like, oh, we're going to put him in the white suit and hat so that he's the villain. He's the drug dealer villain, because they all wear white suits. Like, that'd be a sweaty, dirty, filthy mess.
It would.
In the desert. The third build, I think, I don't know what the actual billing is, but the third star of this movie, and really the reason that this movie got chopped by about 45 minutes in the edit, is Michael Ironside, because when they looked at the final footage, the director called him and was like, "Michael, it looks like this is the Michael Ironside movie with Nick Nolte and Powers Booth in it."
Yep.
And he was really the focal point of this movie. He's been in so many great things. He was Jester in Top Gun. He's Richter in Total Recall. He's one of the quintessential tough guy actors. And I mean, between him and Powers Booth being in this film and Clancy Brown, you've got three of them, just some of the most memorable voices the past 40 years.
Oh, definitely. And this movie is like a who's who of character actors.
Absolutely. I'm not a big fan of that term, character actors, but they are that guy actors where it's like, hey, I know that guy. Hey, that guy was in this. Hey, that guy. And I feel like that's what people mean when they say character actor, where it's like you don't know their name and they were never a big star, but you recognize them from stuff.
Yep.
And every one of these guys is one of those guys.
Definitely. And when we first talked about this, you had brought that up, and the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, wow, you're totally right. I mean, I know him. I can't place him, but I know him.
He's the leader of the Special Forces team. His whole crew is Clancy Brown, Larry B. Scott from Iron Eagle, and Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds.
You have William Forsythe?
A young and pudgy William Forsythe.
Now, the one guy I had to look up, Matt, what's his name? Matt Mulhern?
Matt Mulhern, yep.
I had never seen him before.
He was in a few things. He was in One Crazy Summer with John Cusack. He was the blonde bully in that.
Okay.
He was in Biloxi Blues with Matthew Broderick.
Yep. And believe it or not, he was in Major Dad.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me. I'm like, whoa. It's like I recognize him. Where do I know him from? So
yeah, he was in a lot of things in that time period. The only one that's kind of unknown is the big black guy, Dan Tullis, that plays Luther. He has such an interesting credit, kind of like background, bouncer or bodyguard or tough guy in a lot of movies, but he does the voice for an insurance commercial that you hear on the radio.
Really?
It's been on for like 5 or 6 years, and he introduces himself when he starts talking, and he's like, "This is Dan Tullis for Mutual of Omaha," or whatever the insurance company is.
Oh,
and when I heard that name, I was like, I know that name from somewhere, and I looked it up, and I'm like, holy shit, it's Luther from Extreme Prejudice. And it's damn sure him, too, because he's got a very distinct voice.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to look that up because wow.
The Great Rip Torn as Sheriff Hank Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
Maria Conchita Alonso, who I had the biggest crush on around this time. I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, and I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And she had a pretty good run during this time. She was in The Running Man, Colors. She was in Predator 2. She was in McBain. She was in a Michael Keaton movie called Touch and Go.
The Running Man was my first introduction to her. And the thing I didn't know about her is she's a singer.
Yeah.
And she actually has a song on the soundtrack to Scarface.
Yes.
Which I'm like, that blew my mind. I'm like, okay. But I guess at least in Latin America, she was more popular for her singing than her acting.
Yeah, she was kind of a crossover, kind of I don't want to say like Madonna, but like kind of like a Kylie Minogue or whatever, where it's like, oh yeah, hey, she's an actress and she's a singer, like
kind of like Olivia Newton-John, not as big, of course, but
yeah. And she was Cuban and playing a Mexican here, which I never knew. I always assumed she was Mexican, but
me too. I didn't realize.
One of my biggest gripes with this movie, even though I love it so much, is that I wish she had a little bit more meat to sink her teeth into with this role. They really don't give her much to do other than kind of fight with Nick Nolte and then be scared of Powers Booth.
Right.
So that's unfortunate. And they treat her as kind of a commodity, too, which is problematic. Who we're forgetting?
Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown, he's been in a ton of stuff. He was the Kurgan in Highlander. He played the Frankenstein monster in The Bride. He was in a Jamie Lee Curtis movie called Blue Steel.
He was the dad in the rebooted Nightmare on Elm Street. He played Nancy's father.
He was the drill instructor in Starship Troopers.
Yep.
Just been in a lot of stuff, and he also has done a ton of voice acting in cartoons. He voiced Lex Luthor for the Superman cartoon as well as Justice League. Special Forces crew are, these like tough guys and dirty and like all this testosterone. And then they've got him, and he's like 5'5", and he's dressed like completely preppy, and he's their tech expert.
Yep, he's their comms guy.
Yeah, and if you didn't, I mean, he's wearing pink pants at one point, like pink slacks, and like a blue Barracuda jacket that's got like the red plaid inside of it.
The members
And
only jacket, and he's got the checkered slip-on shoes. I'm like,
he's wearing like the lacy like cable knit sweaters and stuff.
mm-hmm.
So when you look at him, you're like, wow, he's kind of, and it's Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds, so you're kind of looking at him like, wow, he's dressed sort of effeminately, like he kind of metrosexual, I guess.
Right.
The very first thing you see him do is he's trying to set up a date with a chick on the phone, and he's literally calling like, hey, is this Rhonda? Yeah, my friend, like he gave me your number. Like, hey, what's up? And then one of the other guys hangs the phone up, and he's like, oh, I was this close to getting some,
Right. It just doesn't work. I mean, he's too much of a dork to be on this team. And doesn't he mention where he'd been working? Where was in Cologne? Was he the guy that was in France?
No, Clancy Brown was in Cologne.
That's right.
And Luther was in Manila, and I can't remember where he said he was.
They're all coming from different corners of the world.
So I mean, what I equate him to in this is the Clarence Gilliard Jr. from Die Hard, where it's like you've got all these other like terrorists, and they're all gunmen basically, and then you've got the computer guy.
Right.
He knows how to crack into safes, and he's wearing sweaters, and he's kind of and he's.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's
sorry.
No. He's very much he was the dude from Die Hard,
but it was a year before Die Hard,
right?
And it's a weird one. I do love that at the end you get to see him put that Steyr AUG together. He's right in the middle of it, just with all the other guys. It seems a little bit against type for his character, but his justification for being on that team. It's like, yeah, he's our tech guy, but look, I mean, he can get into the shit with the rest of these guys.
Well, when push comes to shove, even if you're a tech guy, if you make a spec ops team like that, you will have the chops to shoot.
Yeah.
But
I definitely. But I mean, I love that they didn't just brush him aside, where it's like, oh, let's give him a stupid, like dumb nerd death, with Clancy Brown's Larry McRose.
Yep.
And I'm going to call all these guys by their last names.
Okay.
Or some of them by their first names, I guess. It gets a little bit confusing, But yeah, I feel like Clancy Brown's Sergeant McRose is the heart of this team. Like he's kind of the moral compass, but he's also, he's the hard soldier that is trying to keep them all in line.
He's a true soldier, as opposed to their command, who, well, not that we're giving anything away here, but that essentially screws them over.
Yeah, and he's questioning him from the very beginning.
Right. Usually, you won't. It's illegal to take missions on U.S. soil like this. And why are they robbing a bank? It makes from a soldier's perspective, it makes absolutely zero sense why they're doing this.
Yeah, well, he even points that out, and he says that to Michael Ironside's character. Why don't we just file a writ with a judge and subpoena the bank,
right, to
get what we need? Why do we have to rob it? And they're like, oh, we have to do that to cover what we're getting. And it's kind of like you can see. When he hears that, he's kind of like, that's pretty fucking thin,
It's very thin.
So I think at that point, that's when he's just like, okay, now I'm completely checked out. Now I know he's up to no good. But he's questioning it the whole movie.
For as crazy as it sounds, the opening shot of this movie is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The sunrise.
Oh, yeah, the sunrise, yeah. Well, and we haven't talked about the music yet. But the musical score is by Jerry Goldsmith. The best musical composer for film, I think, ever, in my opinion. And I really think this is not just one of his most underrated. I think it's one of his prettiest original pieces. Because he does just like every music composer for movies, they borrow from themselves a lot. Some of them worse than others, like James Horner and even Hans Zimmer. Like they do a lot of similar things, John Williams, but in this, it's like somebody told him, take classic cowboy Mexican folk music and mix that with 80s synthesizers.
Yep.
And it's perfect. It's a perfect blend of those two things that should not go together.
No, and it's part of it, it's almost ethereal. It almost reminds me of, I hate to make the comparison here, but Vangelis. In certain, especially in the opening score, when the the drums kind of go down and it's less military, and you get into this really ethereal. It reminds me of pieces of Blade Runner. There's chunks of Blade Runner come out, but
the opening scene and the credits that's a great little piece of music, and it's got kind of a military flair to it, but then there's that like
and let's face it, it almost, that opening scene with the old green military ID cards, and they're showing that each of these guys are dead. They're giving their history. If that doesn't scream the A-Team, I don't know what does.
Oh yeah, the whole beginning in this movie is like the A-Team. Let's jump right into the roadmap.
Sure.
Because that's pretty much where we're at right now anyway. So the movie opens with that beautiful sunset scene and the military type synth score, and then we go into...
It's a teletype machine.
Wait, no, the movie opens with the teletype, not the sunrise.
Correct.
Okay, so that's it opens with the teletype printer, and there's all this military jargon, and the camera's kind of panning over, and you pick out certain phrases, and there's top secret, zombie unit, werewolf. And when you just see this stuff, you're like, what? That's just, okay, it's like Operation Werewolf, I don't know. But when you learn what's going on in the film and the plot, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're a zombie unit because they're all legally dead. And the designation werewolf is that they are in plain clothes.
Correct.
And that they're basically a monster in hiding. Mm-hmm. So it's...
And I love how they take the time to say who each guy is and what happened to them. Like, one guy died in a crash, body unrecognizable. This other one dies here. So by the time it's over, you realize, okay, this is if you were paying attention, this is the zombie unit they were referencing at the very beginning.
Well, and they do a great bit of character building with that too, because not only do you see the characters' names, but you see like, okay, this is when so you basically get their age too, where it's like this guy was killed on maneuvers in Manila or whatever, and then you see this guy killed in 1973, 14 years before this, diffusing unexploded ordnance in Laos.
Right.
So you see some of these guys are Vietnam veterans.
Right. And Michael Ironside, Hackett, he dies during the evacuation of Saigon. So you have a mix of older and quote unquote newer vets or soldiers. Yeah.
Even though some of these guys, like Clancy Brown, was like 25 in this movie. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
He plays older, but he was actually 25 when they shot this movie. He's actually, I think he just turned 62, so he's...
Oh, wow.
He's pretty young compared to some of these guys.
With the beard he had, you wouldn't know that. He didn't look... I'm surprised. He didn't look that young.
Oh, yeah. He looked like he was in his mid to late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Ironside, I know we talked about this when we did our episode of Top Gun on your podcast. He was 36 in this movie.
And he looks way older than that. I would have never put him 50. At that age. Yeah.
Yeah. Nick Nolte was older than any of these guys. And I like that they they're a little bit ambiguous throughout the movie. You can't really tell if they're the good guys doing what good soldiers are supposed to do, or if there's something else, or if they're really the bad guys.
Mm.
And I kind of like that. I like that there's kind of a fluid ambiguity to everybody in this film. Because even with Cash Bailey, he's the bad guy, but you can't help but like him a little bit because he's just so affable and he's like, yeah, man, let's we got to get you one of these helicopters. We'll put some fucking bombs on them, go hunt some hogs.
I mean, he's absolutely terrible to him, but he remembers it. This is still my friend. I've known him since I was a kid. We used to go fishing together.
Well, and this hits me because I have friends that I'm still technically friends with, but they're not the same friends I remember, and they never will be.
Sure.
And it sucks to kind of see who they are now. And they've just kind of become this Cash Bailey version of themselves, and there's no coming back from it, as bad as you want to. So I get that a lot more now than I did when I first saw this film, because then it was kind of like, oh, why don't they just be friends again,
People change, and sometimes you can't.
Yeah, well, and sometimes you get too far down the road to ever turn around and go back. And I feel like that's where he's at. So after we get the introduction with all the dossiers, or the military IDs, to the Special Forces team and meet up with each other, and you see that not only do they know who each other are, but they are friends.
But they don't always necessarily get along.
Well, they're all friendly, but some of them do not like each other. Yeah.
In fact, it takes Hackett to say, "Is there a problem here, Sergeant?" No, just straightening things out. And
he's like, he was like, what do they want you on this mission for, Luther? To teach us how to lift weights? Yeah, so there's a little bit of animosity there for some reason. They never really get into it, but there's also camaraderie though, because he's really upset when Luther, spoiler alert, when Luther gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all upset.
When you're on a team with the same amount of guys rotating in and out long enough, even if you can't stand the dude next to you, he's got your back and you got his.
Right.
No matter what. I mean, even if you can't stand each other outside of that environment, you will back each other up. And it hurts when one of these guys get taken out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially in that fashion too, because it was due to just a kind of a dumb mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it was a little bit of him not expecting that person to be there, but also expecting his teammates to be there to take that guy out.
And they weren't.
Yeah, and it was kind of, it was a bad setup. It was a bad plan. And they talk about that later after it happens too, where Biddle even says, he goes, if Buck would have sneezed, he would have been late,
Right, so it was too tight.
From there, after the credits stop, we go to a rainstorm at night, and a truck pulls up to a bar. Two guys that get out of the truck are Jack Bentine, who is a Texas Ranger, played by Nick Nolte, and Sheriff Hank Pearson, played by Rip Torn. And they are on site to apprehend a fugitive that they are after a gentleman named T.C. Luke and his brother, Chub Luke. These are local boys who are running drugs back and forth over the border for Cash Bailey, played by Powers Booth. They're just dirt farmers trying to make extra money and trying to keep food on the table. So Jack goes into the bar first, finds T.C. Luke is sitting at the bar playing cards with his entourage. So he walks in slow, approaches the table, and basically says, "You're coming with me," and they have an Old West showdown, basically. And T.C. Luke is actually, I can't remember the actor's name, but he is, the only other thing I've seen that actor in was the movie No Retreat, No Surrender.
Good movie.
He plays the fat, blonde-headed bully.
Yep, the guy that's eating cake when the first time you see him.
And smears cake on his face. And I'm gonna kill you. Yeah. But he's actually, he does a fair job of playing a different character in this, because you almost don't recognize him. And he asks Nick Nolte, how much help you got outside? Jack flips it right back to him. He's like, "How much help you think I need?"
Right. And they establish the fact that Nick Nolte is a badass at this point, because when he walks in, the crowd parts as he's walking through.
Oh, yeah.
No one impedes him at all. It's like, at one point, a guy one of the guys in the crowd looks up, and you see like a startled look on his face, and he moves over immediately to the right, and then they do the reverse shot of him walking towards the table, and that crowd parts like the Red Sea.
Yep. Oh, yeah, they don't want none of it. Well, not to mention he's holding a 30-30 lever action and just basically like out of the fucking way.
Right.
But he's based on, his character, Jack Bentine, is based on a real-life Texas Ranger who's a legendary one named Joaquin Jackson.
I guess, didn't Nick Nolte spend, 3-6 weeks with him to learn how to carry himself? How does a Ranger act? Their mannerisms, things like that.
Yep.
I just thought that was fascinating. To spend that much time just to get it right is dedication.
Yeah. Well, and Nick Nolte in this film, he doesn't smile once. He is just as terse and as intense as any performance I've ever seen from somebody. There's no levity whatsoever. I mean, he looks like he's trying to make a diamond by putting a piece of coal in his ass or something. He's just is rigid and unwavering, and that's his character.
And that was one of the things I had read, that Nick Nolte, the reason why he took this role is this dude is a good guy with no ambiguity. He's not like what was his name in 48 Hours?
Jack Cates.
Thank you. But there's like a moral gray area.
Yeah.
Is he good? Is he? He'll beat the hell out of a suspect just to get a confession out of him. This guy won't.
Yeah.
He'll do everything exactly by the book. And I had read that Nick Nolte said I wanted something like that. I never played it up to that point. He had never played anyone that pure. So he was
and he's terse and he's hard, but he's doing his job and he's doing the right thing.
right.
And he's doing what he's supposed to do. There's no flippancy whatsoever. And he's like that in his relationship with Maria Conchita Alonso's character, Sarita. She's just trying to get some emotion out of him and trying to talk about some things. And he's like, I don't want to talk about this.
Right.
Like, we can't. We have to give it all a rest, all the talk. And it's like dude.
I mean, I don't want to say he's one-sided. He's not. He's very multifaceted here. But this is like the one trait that comes out more than anything else is this rigid lawman.
Yep.
I
equate him in this movie to Gary Cooper in High Noon.
Okay.
He's that old school marshal that does what's right, no matter if it costs him his life, and no matter if all the bad guys everywhere come for him. This is what I am hired to do.
This sounds weird, but he's almost kind of like RoboCop in the fact that he won't break the law to get the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Going down to Mexico, he's kind of out of his jurisdiction.
Well, and he does break the rules for that, whereas if he played it straight, it would have been like, no, you guys are in jail and I'm going to arrest you and you're all going down.
Right.
And I'll get cash bail on my own terms. But he wants his girl and he wants cash one way or another, so he plays ball with them.
Mm-hmm.
But you can even see on that bus ride down to Mexico how ashamed of himself he is. How he's just kind of sitting there and it's like, here, you want some whiskey? And he's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm. How does he put it? I'm very particular who I drink with. Well, he says that twice.
Yeah.
Twice.
When Hackett sits down at the bar, he's all like, I'm particular who I drink with.
Right.
So he's in the bar trying to take down T.C. Luke. T.C. Luke tries to stand up and draw on him, and he blows him away.
Mm-hmm. And then Hank Pearson comes in behind him as backup.
Yep.
But he really doesn't necessarily need it. And he's got that 12-gauge pump action with him.
Well, the one guy tries to run. He tries to run out of the bar, and Hank just, stock jacks him right in the face with that shotgun.
That hurt, too. I guarantee you that hurt.
Puts a round into the roof and says, don't nobody move unless you want some of this.
He gets everyone's attention.
Fun fact about that shotgun, that's not a police issue shotgun. That's a hunting or a skeet shooting. I want to say that was a 20 gauge too. I'm not sure, and I didn't look it up, but it has a very long barrel, and it's a thin looking barrel too. It might have been a 12, but that looks like a 20 gauge. Rip Torn brought that shotgun, and you could do this, I guess, in 1987 when you were famous or whatever. He brought that shotgun on the plane when he arrived for filming of that movie.
So that was his personal weapon?
That was his shotgun, and he brought it because he wanted to use that shotgun for that character. And he had a tag on it and everything, and he had it as a carry-on. I don't know how they did it back then. Maybe they had to take it apart and have it up front with the pilots or something, but he carried that shotgun with him when he arrived for that. And I thought that was a really interesting touch because I'm like, now it makes sense that he wouldn't have a police issue shotgun.
Right, because he's got his own.
Yep.
And you couldn't get away with that nowadays. Just, no.
You can't even say the word shotgun on a plane now.
Right.
And then basically arrest the rest of his crew, and I guess they get like 2 kilos or something like that of cocaine. So then after that, Benteen goes home, and we are introduced. It's early in the morning. We're introduced to his girlfriend, Sarita, played by Maria Conchita Alonso. She follows him into the bathroom. They're talking a little bit, and he tells her what happened. He had to kill a guy, and she's being a good girlfriend at this point. She's like, you want a beer or a tequila or something? You want to talk about it? And he's just kind of being kind of a jerk.
Yeah, he's too macho for his own good here. She's actually trying to help him out. But let's talk about this ridiculous pink bathroom, okay? It just the first time I saw this, it reminded me of my aunt's house back in the 80s. The whole thing is pink. Everything.
Well, there is a little detail in the lines of this movie when he's talking to, I believe it's Cash, and he says, are you still in your daddy's house?
Still fixing it up.
Still fixing your daddy's house up?
Mm-hmm.
So that house is kind of a shithole too. And it looks a lot like Lone Wolf McQuade's house from that movie. Similar, it's bigger, but it's that kind of Texas adobe, ranch, whatever.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I feel like that was his dad's house, and that was probably his mom's.
Yeah, a little later when they're both in bed, just that sickly greenish blue pillowcases and sheets. it just sticks out at you. It's like, oh, no.
Yeah, there was nothing modern about it. It was very just Stone Age kind of feeling. And I feel like they were doing that by design. They wanted to be like, no, this guy lives for the job, and he doesn't give a fuck about his bedspread or anything.
Right. Well, he doesn't even have a personal vehicle because he drove up in the sheriff's truck.
Yeah, he's in that Ram Charger that's the Texas Ranger issue or whatever for that year. And from there, we cut to... So we basically get the idea that they have a strained relationship. From there, they cut to Cash Bailey in the desert, played by Powers Booth. He's in a kind of a nondescript house, and he's playing with a scorpion in his hand. That was a real scorpion, and he actually crushed it in his hand. That was not a stunt scorpion. He did that in one take.
The first time you see him, I brought this up before, but again, Miami Vice meets a Western because he's got the ring on and the watch. It just screams drug dealer. Even if you didn't know this guy was a drug dealer up to this point, you can tell.
Oh, absolutely. He's Tony Montana as a cowboy.
Right. And he's got the hat sideways, but it works. In a weird way, it works.
And then his helicopter arrives, and two of his henchmen, I think one or two of his henchmen get out. One of the henchmen is played by Tom Tiny Lister Jr., who most people will know as Debo from the Friday movie.
He was also in Armed and Dangerous with John Candy.
He's also Zeus in No Holds Barred, the Hulk Hogan movie. He was also the president in The Fifth Element. He was in a ton of movies. He was in Universal Soldier. He was in The Dark Knight. He was the prisoner in The Dark Knight that everybody listens to when they're on the boat.
Oh, okay.
The henchman's name is Monday. That's from him later on being introduced by the other henchman saying, hey, remember him from Monday Night Football? That they set up his backstory that he's an ex-football player that blew his knee out.
That I caught, but I didn't realize his name was Monday. I somehow didn't catch that.
If you watch it with subtitles on, Powers Booth calls him Monday.
Well, he's also wearing a football jersey too. I mean, it's like, and then the other henchman looks like he's walking around with, he looks like Pancho Villa. He's got shotgun with the shells and the bandolier. It's like,
well, he looks like he's right out of the Three Amigos or something.
Right.
So from that scene, we cut to, I'm just going to call him our A-team, the Special Forces guy in a surveillance van, or at least it's Biddle in the surveillance van, and he is following Cash Bailey's drop man to the bank as he delivers
cash.
He delivers cash to, not cash, but actual
money.
Cash, like actual money to the bank, and the bank manager is like, I can't keep taking all this. I've got the feds in my books. And the guy's like, well, you're just going to have to open more banks, huh? So you get the idea that Cash is doing business with this bank, and...
Right. And the van that they're in with I don't know if you noticed the radar dish or the listening dish on top of it, okay?
Oh, yeah.
This thing would stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, but they have a fake company that says Westex.
Right. It's supposed to be a communications company or something, but no. This thing sticks out like a sore thumb. First of all, it's mauve, and they could have picked something better to at least try to cover up the fact that they're doing surveillance. I mean, you have a radar dish that's right there. Come on.
Yeah, it was a little silly.
Parabolic microphone, actually, but...
From there, we get one of Bailey's other drop men delivering, or thugs or whatever, delivering a rabbit in a cage to a place called the Chicken Champ.
Did you recognize this guy?
Which guy?
The dude who is delivering the chicken, or the
only thing I've seen him in is Commando.
Yep. That's the only other thing I've ever seen him. Or no, he was also in Marked for Death. He was one of the henchmen that Seagal talks to at the very beginning of the movie. I think he's the main drug dealer.
Well, the rabbit has a bomb in it, and they deliver that to, I guess, blow up the business and the owner of the business who owed money to Cash Bailey or something.
I guess.
They don't really go into that, but it's somebody that he had dealings with that held out on him. So he blows him up. The A-team then does a little bit of surveillance on Jack Bentine for some fucking reason. One of the only plot holes I found in this that's glaring is like, why did they give a shit about who he is? He's a Texas Ranger.
Right. And how did they even get on his radar, or their radar, if you will? I mean, it's just...
There's no explanation for it. And it's kind of like, Texas Ranger, Jack Bentine. we'll follow this cowboy. We'll work up a profile on him. That way we'll know how to deal with him if we ever have to. And it's like, would they be wasting their time with that? Why would they waste their time with that if they are on a mission? If they're specifically there to do something like, oh, let's follow this guy just in case we ever have to deal with him.
Again, it's almost like you're watching two separate movies that don't necessarily mesh well together.
Well, they're two separate movies that are driving in the same neighborhood, and eventually they crash into each other. That's basically what happens. We've been chasing the same thing, and now we're going to ride together.
True, but I don't know. It's just, at times I felt it was disjointed. Like, you could cut out the entire thing with the Special Forces team, and it will be a good movie on its own.
It would be a movie on its own. I don't think it would be nearly as good. It would be a more straightforward love triangle, good guy, bad guy.
I suppose you could do the same thing the opposite way.
Yeah. Yeah, but you could have just a Special Forces team breaking into a bank to get some stuff out of a safe deposit box to take down a drug dealer, but plot twist, the head of the team is involved with the drug dealer.
Right.
And you could make that its own movie. So, I feel like there's two solid independent movies if you cut those things in half. Mm-hmm. But I don't think either one of them is as good as when you put them together.
Okay. I see your point. Because every time I watch this, it just, for some reason, I don't want to say it bothered me, but it's like, this whole section you could cut out and it would work. This whole section you could cut out and it would work.
I don't think we needed an extra 45 minutes in this movie, but if we would have gotten an extra 20 of exposition and plot development, I think it would have greatly enhanced it. I think a lot of what you didn't like about it probably would have been fixed by that.
Okay. Makes sense. At least fill in some backstory,
So then we cut to Jack Bentine interrogating a Mexican about the exploding rabbit bomb. So then they cut to that scene where him and Rip Torn are there waiting, and they have a little bit of a talk beforehand. He tosses him the rifle, and he's like, I don't know what I can hit from this range or this cut down thing.
Cut down barrel.
So then Cash. He walks out and meets with Cash.
And of course, the flare when Cash shows up. I mean, he circles around with the chopper and then lands in 80s bad guy fashion.
Yep, you got to do it just like an 80s bad guy. And so they establish that they're old friends. They talk about a girl that they both had sex with on prom night or something.
Yep.
Yeah, they do a little how you been, that kind of shit. I mean, you buy that these guys like each other and that at least they used to be pals.
They used to be friends, and they still have a mutual respect for each other.
Yes. Even if both of them thinks they'll never be friends again, they don't want to be enemies.
Right. And you can tell, like you were saying, they'll never be friends again. But it's like, okay, you went down this path, I went down this path, but maybe we can leave it like it is, so we don't have to fight each other. At this point, I don't think Jack he doesn't want. It almost sounds like he doesn't want to bring him in. Like, he does have a sense of duty, but it's his friend. He doesn't want to do it. You know what I mean?
Well, they both want the same thing. He wants him to just stop selling dope so that he can just forget about it and not pursue him anymore. And he's offering him that, like, hey, I won't come after you for any of this shit you've done in the past 3 years, but you got to stop now. And Cash, on the other end of that coin, wants him to just look the other way and just be like, "Yo, no, just don't catch me. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. You keep doing what you're doing, but leave me the fuck out of it."
And Cash even says, he's like, "Why don't you come and work for me? You could make $100,000 a year working for me." But I see where you're coming from.
They both want the same thing, but from different sides of the fence. They're not going to compromise, basically.
No, because they're too rigid in. I mean, like we said earlier, that the Ranger is just that. He is a Ranger through and through. He's not going to back down on it. Cash, on the other hand, I think he's drunk on his own power. He likes the money and whatnot he's making, and even though he realizes what he's doing is wrong, he's not willingly going to give that up.
Right. Well, he even says that too. He's like, you don't understand. They want the stuff. They love it.
Yep.
And so he feels like he's, somebody's going to sell it to him. It might as well be him. And I feel like a lot of drug dealers kind of get that psychosis, where they think, hey, might as well be me making all the money.
Mm-hmm. It's going to come in anyhow.
Somebody's going to get it. I want it.
Right.
So they have a little bit of a tension when Cash mentions Sarita and asks how she's been, and Jack tries to just walk it off, and he keeps just badgering him about her, and then he was like, quit selling dope, or I'm gonna take you out.
And it's him mentioning Sarita is the one thing that gets under his skin,
and he knows that. He knows that's what'll do it. So the way they leave it is Cash says to him, I got a feeling next time we meet, we're going to have us a killing. So it kind of sets the stage for what is to come.
Foreshadowing.
So from there, we cut to the unemployment office.
Yes.
Where
I forgot all about this.
Where our two of our special forces guys they're there to get arrested and thrown into jail. So
and
they decide to have a little fight.
And they do a very good job at it, too. William Forsythe and Luther. It's such a one-sided fight. I mean, Luther just should have pounded him into the ground. He's twice his size.
Well, it's one punch.
Knocks him out.
But you gotta love, even though some of the verbiage in this scene is racist and problematic, you've got to give it to Forsythe that he plays this character so well. As this kind of greaseball, dirty, hillbilly, uncouth, ratty scuzzball. But he's so capable, and he's got so many layers to him that he comes off. I mean, when you see him in the airport, he's like, hey, cowgirl. Hey, once I got a face, you got a place to sit.
Yeah.
He's just, he's being just so overbearing and just awful. But later on in the film, you see how fucking capable this dude is, and how he knows which wires to cut, and just some of the backstory that they give him. He talks about rats. He's like, man, you want to see rats? Go to Monaco, man. Rats the size of a dog.
And he's still a soldier. He's honorable. He later on when they say go ahead and to kill the ranger, he won't go along with it. He's even the one that tells him you're in trouble, you're in danger. So a scuzzball he might be, but he's still honorable.
Absolutely. Well, and the first time you really see that is when the rest of the team pick him and Luther up from the jail after they bail him out, and they get in the car, and that's when they tell him, bad news, it's a daylight hit. And he has his reaction to that, which is, how do you fucking figure this, man? Like, people are going to get fucking hurt if we do this in the daytime. And that's when McRose is like, I don't figure it. I follow orders. So, I mean, you see a little bit of that humanity coming out in him. And it's like, okay, he's not such a scuzzball now.
And he also knows that this is just a bad plan. You wouldn't do this in broad daylight.
Yeah, but yeah, he's really good in this role. And they all are, but I feel like Clancy Brown and William Forsythe just really kill it as these two characters.
Definitely. And especially after they get arrested and when he's interrogating him in the cell, he doesn't give up any information. That's his training kicking in, you know what I mean? And he plays that off convincingly because he comes up with a story about, how he was, stealing cars.
Well, he comes up and they know that they're busted, and he comes up and he's like, "Where'd you serve in the army, Buck?" And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I ain't never served in no damn army. And what about you? And he's like, oh. And he was like, well, I suppose you didn't serve either. You stayed home and stole cars. And he was like, nope, I sold dope.
That's how I bought cars. Sold dope.
And Buck has a great line that he says to Hackett. He was like, none of us like it, but we do what we do, and we do it good. And I feel like that says it all.
Definitely.
Benteen and Pearson are at the ranger's office or the sheriff's office. I guess they share facilities there.
Yeah, I just thought he was just visiting. Does he have a desk? I never saw him sit down at his own desk or anything. He's always just hanging.
He may have just been visiting. Yeah, that might have just been the ranger station. I don't know.
Right, because he's always.
I don't think they would have arrested two guys fighting and taken them to a ranger station.
Well, if there was nothing else around, I mean,
I think they shared an office. I think those were all, because those guys all worked for.
That's right, they were sheriff's department, yeah. Okay.
So they're at the office and they are talking about Bailey, talking about Cash. Of course, Rip Torn gives that beautiful line where the right way is the hardest, wrong way is the easiest. Kind of it's like the law of nature. Water follows the path of least resistance. So you get crooked rivers and crooked men. And I absolutely love that line. But he just delivers it so naturally. And you believe that guy is actually a sheriff in Texas.
And he comes with this sage wisdom out of nowhere. I mean, and you can also feel that there's a big respect for him and Jack. I mean, he's truly his buddy or his friend.
Sounds like his father figure. I mean, he was And you can tell he was friends with his dad, so he's almost like this uncle or whatever. And but even when he's talking about, I had a fight with Sarita, or he brought up Sarita talking about Cash, he's like, well, Sarita went with him way before y'all ever got together. And he's kind of like playing devil's advocate, where it's like, well, you ain't got no room to be pissed about that.
Right.
So even though he's his buddy, he's setting him straight.
Is this where we go to the gas station?
Nope, not yet. Jack goes home later after that day or whatever.
That's right.
Has a fight with Sarita because she knows that he met with Cash.
And when my fiance and I were watching this, this scene drove her nuts.
What, the shower scene?
Well, not necessarily the shower scene. It's just the conversation they had, because it's like, okay, if you're with him, why do you care if Cash brought you up? Did he talk about me? It's like, okay, which one do you want here? I mean, you're with him, but do you secretly want this other guy?
It's a stupid fight to pick. It's a stupid hill to die on, because it's like, oh, did he mention me? No, he didn't. Oh, okay. That's all you got to do. You know he fucking mentioned you, but if you don't want to fight, just let it fucking go.
Right. And then she starts going off, well, I need to know how did she put it? I need to know where we're going and how long it's going to take us to get there. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. It's like, which one do you want, lady? I mean
well, and I feel like, again, like another 20 minutes and we get all of this shit fixed. But I feel like they were trying to have her be really frustrated with their relationship because of how rigid he is and how it's just like I'm 2 years of climbing in and out of your bed and I don't know where I stand. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I get it. She wants him to commit to something beyond just, I'll meet you here when we both get off work. But the way that she delivers it is kind of...
It's almost like she's a high school girl that can't decide which guy she wants to be with.
Like, Cash isn't even on her radar until she finds out that he went and had a meeting with it. He makes it worse by saying, no, he didn't even mention you, because she knows. Like, if he would have just said, yeah, he asked how you were doing, I said you were fine. Boom, no fight. I mean, we're probably too far into the weeds, but yeah, it's an annoying scene, and they're fighting kind of just to fight. I feel like the script called for them to need to fight so that they break up, or she's pissed, or has a reason to go down to Mexico with
Mexico.
Jack, Sheriff Pearson talking, and they get a lead on where Chub Luke is.
Mm-hmm.
So they drive out to this little roadside gas station bar called Arturo's to check it out. They pull up, and while they're on their way out there, McRose and Major Hackett are in a car, and they are following.
They're running surveillance on him for some reason. Maybe they're trying to get a lead on how strong the Op 4 is going to be, the police in the town, because, well, they basically give them a tactical layout of the inside of that sheriff's department, so they know exactly what they're facing if need be.
Yeah, they know what their capabilities. I feel like that's enough. Like, why would they need to follow Jack and Hank at this point? I don't know. It makes sense when you're Major Hackett, because you know that they are on Cash's trail. So that's why he would want to follow them, but I don't know how he justifies that to McRose, really, but whatever. They follow him. I mean, we could talk about that for an hour, but they follow him out to Arturo's. Arturo comes out and says, yeah, there's these 2 guys. They've been hanging out in here all day.
Drinking beers.
Drinking beers. One of them, big guy, got a beard. They call him Chub. So he sets them up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Jack goes in, and Hank stays outside to cover him, and he keeps Arturo out there with him. As Jack is walking into the building, Hank catches a glimpse of somebody hiding in one of the junk cars outside. He realizes, Hank sees that it's an ambush. He shoots the guy, and he yells out, Jack! And kind of warns him. And then Arturo pulls a 357 out, shoots Hank in the back. Hank turns around with a shotgun, blows Arturo away.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets shot by Chubb with an MP5 submachine gun. Mm-hmm. And as he's falling to the ground, Hank lets out this like, but you got to give it to him. He goes out fucking swinging.
Well, it's interesting in this scene here. I was watching an interview with Walter Hill, and we haven't gotten here yet, but we all know the crazy gun battle, how the movie ends.
Mm-hmm.
But he said this scene, the gas station shootout scene, was his favorite in the entire film because it was
a beautiful scene. Yeah.
Oh, it is, because it's so tightly shot, and you can feel the tension. And so much for endless bullets. They reload. They actually have to reload here.
Yeah, and they have a pretty good bullet discipline in this scene too. And I love that he scampers behind his truck, and they think he's still behind the Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
And he grabs Hank's shotgun, and while the guy's trying to sneak up and get him behind the Chevy, he gets underneath that Ram Charger and blows the top of that dude's foot off.
Ouch.
Yeah, that was a great little squib.
And I also like the fact that the Hackett and what is his name? McRose are now watching him in action, so they see not only the training he's had, but how good he is with a firearm. So at this point, they're like, okay, maybe this guy isn't someone we can push around.
That comes into play later, but
right.
And maybe he's not thinking that right then because their robbery hasn't gotten botched yet. So they see the shootout. Chubb gets away. Chubb actually comes up behind where Hackett and McRose are, and they kill Chubb and his henchmen. They pretend to be like surveyors from the city or something like that. It's a little bit, the one problem I have with this is it's a little bit sloppy of the special forces guys to leave their brass.
True. We usually police your brass.
Yeah, especially when you know there's going to be a crime scene.
But then again, how much they know they just witnessed a massive shootout and they know reinforcements are on the way. So how much time do they really have to police their brass?
True, very true.
So it could have just been a slip up on their part because they have to get out quick.
Well, and maybe Hackett uses that to his advantage and says, okay, well, I'm going to go pretend to be a DEA agent, and then I can tell him what those bullet casings are, because I know they're going to come up as missing or they're going to be hard to find or whatever. So I'll try to get him and find out what he knows about Cash Bailey, and a lot of maybes in there. At the crime scene, Jack shows up and picks up some of those casings and sees that they're different than the ammunition that was used to kill Hank. So that's when he starts looking into that.
And they can't place him anywhere.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that he has a binder of CIA issued brass. I'm like, really? I can see the FBI. I can see that. But the CIA? No.
Those binders don't exist. Yeah, they don't want you to have info that they have.
Right.
Their whole thing. So from there, the special forces guys are surveilling the bank, and they record a phone call about a money drop from one of Cash Bailey's guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Hackett goes to Jack's office to meet with him and is masquerading as Frank Ralston from the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
Says that he's part of a joint task force trying to take out the drug trade or whatever, and he wants some cooperation. Jack basically tells him to go get fucked.
Yep.
Yeah, and
well, he even says, he's like, I got a case file the size of a phone book, and I can't even get you guys to look into some information for me. So I could see where he would be like, fuck you, no, because you've been screwing me around for the last year. Why would I help you now?
Yeah.
It makes total sense to me.
So after his, dismissal, he goes to the bar to see Sarita Singh, and he's sitting at a table drinking, and then Hackett shows up, again as Ralston, and sits down, and he says, cut the bullshit, I can help you, you can help me, and they have a little bit of a come to Jesus, and they agree to kind of work with each other, at least begrudgingly.
Interestingly, I did read that Maria Conchita Alonso actually did do all the singing for this movie.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, that's right.
But she is such a much better singer than what they had going on in this. It was terrible. I mean,
yeah, they had her kind of doing this like barroom mariachi type shit, and it was. I mean, it's the kind of, honestly, I've been to Mexico. It's the kind of thing you see in a bar in Mexico. It's a little bit low rent. And I feel like they could have showcased her a lot better.
Done a lot more with her, but...
Yeah. So he gives Ralston the shell casing to research for him. After Sarita comes down from the stage, they have their big blowout and break up, basically. It's more love triangle stuff. And she's just trying to be a good girlfriend at this point. Like, she's trying to comfort him about Hank dying. And she's like, do you want to talk about it? I'm here. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. I got to do something about it. And it's like, dude, like, unclench your asshole for 5 seconds, man.
It's like, this girl loves you. At least talk to her, but I don't know. He's way too rigid. I mean, no human being is that rigid, especially after your best friend dies.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody processes grief differently, but I mean, he didn't seem to be that much more upset than he always was. Cash Bailey arrives in a limo to Sarita's apartment, I guess, or a hotel room.
Yeah, it seems like it's really run down.
It seems like a old hotel in like East LA or something. Or like in New York City. It's got like a fire escape and shit.
Yeah, and it's like really low rent. And okay, I get Sarita's just a singer in a bar, but I thought she lived with the Ranger. Why is she even here? I mean, is this just a hookup spot?
Well, I feel like when she breaks up with Jack, like whatever, she's just like, oh, okay, well, I'll go stay in a fucking hotel on Skid Row.
Okay. I guess.
Yeah, it almost looked like a hotel out of like West Side Story or something.
It's even worse than like a pay by the hour hot sheet motel that you would see downtown. I mean, because it's falling in on itself.
Yeah, and I don't know how he knew how to find her there, but Cash is there, and he's basically sweet talking her, saying, you know, I got this nice little hacienda down there. It's kind of like it was about 60 or 70 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They treat me like a king.
Yeah, that's right. This is where he says he's got the whole town, trying to impress her with all the money I make and the fact that I have my own fortress, basically.
Well, and she just broke up with Jack because she's like, where are we going and what's this going to be and everything else. And he's literally laying it all out for her, saying, I've got my own little city, basically, and I've got a private army and I'm rich and all you got to do is just be there. We'll have a good fucking time. So she leaves with him. Cut from there to Buck and Luther are down in the sewers. I guess they take a panel off and he shows them which wire he needs to cut to disable the
phone system
at the police station.
Correct.
And that's when they have their little talk about rats. And you know, it's like, oh, they got 4 or 5 pounders down in Managua, ass like a dog.
Doesn't this remind you of like what we did in Berlin? Or was it Germany? Yeah, I know they referenced another mission they were on when they first get into the sewer, just establishing that they've been friends for a long time now. And again, for as being a jackass, I mean, you're right, he knows his shit, because that's some complicated shit right there. You need to know exactly what you're doing to disable that type of stuff.
And I love that he's not just a dipshit for comic relief, where it's like, oh, hold up the door, he's an idiot. But yeah, he's really good. The next day, Hackett shows up as Ralston and gives the bullet back to Jack and gives him the fake information on it that it is 40 or 9mm or something imported by Harrington and Richards through Canada or something.
Yeah.
He gives him some bullshit. So now you can trust me. Yay. And then he leaves. We see the Special Forces team planning the bank robbery in their hotel room or wherever they are.
Because Hackett had already gone through and done recon for the bank itself, so he knows everything. You know, how he knew they were time locks on the bank and the vault was an interesting question, but
he was casing it out, and he knew he had to go into the vault to see the safe deposit boxes.
That's what it was. Okay, I couldn't remember how he got in there, but okay.
So then they come up with their plan. They lay it all out that they have to have radio silence, that everybody checks in on their 2-minute intervals or whatever. Or no, they all check in when they're supposed to at their designated times.
And when that part is complete, they have to use a pager that will beep so they know that this part's complete.
Which is really high tech for 1987.
It was.
Look how high tech we are. Beep 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 beep. I mean, I feel like if they were really high tech, they would have had like the Zach Morris fucking brick phone.
I was just looking at that old computer tech, and I'm going, oh my good lord.
Yeah, they've got like reel to reels in the van.
Half that stuff didn't even have 64 bits of RAM yet.
So from there, we cut to Buck and Coker with a stolen big rig semi-truck with, I guess, some kind of fuel in it or something.
Hydrogen. It says in the bag, hydrogen. Where in the hell did they find a hydrogen truck?
Whoa, I didn't catch that part, but yeah. Yeah, who's delivering hydrogen?
It's like,
I'm assuming like plastique or, you know, some kind of little cube bombs underneath it. Once again, we see Buck's technical proficiency, and they kind of allude to that he's kind of an EOD or a explosives expert.
Yep.
That's how he died, supposedly, was diffusing ordnance.
It will make sense. So
Did you catch that he always wears gloves too?
yes, and I'm thinking about it. Did he have gloves on when he was in jail?
He has gloves on that entire movie.
Really?
Yep. Even when he's in a t-shirt, he has those black gloves on. A little interesting detail because that would imply that he's either missing fingers or he's got burns on his hands. His fake death being, unexploded or exploded ordnance or whatever. I feel like he's got fucked up hands. I feel like that's a.
I can
I
see
feel like
how
that's
they'd
a
be
thing.
burned.
I always caught that. And I was like,
I never. Now that you mention it, I never noticed that. Although it did strike me towards the end of the movie when he's walking through the upstairs of the cantina,
Mhm.
I noticed he had gloves on. But until you mentioned it, I never caught that. Okay.
That's probably a choice he made too, because a lot of times actors will do that and they'll say, "What if he wears gloves? Because he's probably got like fucked up hands, from an explosion or something like that."
I never noticed that until you mentioned it.
Coker is driving the car. He drives the truck and then bails out. They blow up an old barn or whatever it is. Buck is in the car and then he gets in and Coker's driving because he's good at driving cars,
I guess.
And then we cut back to Hackett, McRose, and Luther. And McRose and Luther pull up in a armored car dressed as security guards.
Yep.
And they go into the bank same time as Hackett, and they all pull pantyhose over their heads. And Hackett, and I always thought it was funny, and it was always like, that's what they went with, but I understand why he did it now. Because Hackett went in and cased that bank, and he was there with the bankman. So he had to make himself look different under that mask.
And that I totally get, but the lip. Okay, his lip is jutting. Right, especially when he goes in and he's trying to get into the safety deposit box to get the ledgers. I can't take him seriously looking at this lip. It's like,
bro. Oh yeah, he's got like this Fire Marshal Bill, like oh, in the safe deposit box, sir. What are you afraid of? And he's trying to make himself look, grotesquely different, but it looks fucking ridiculous.
Okay, fine. He might not recognize him, but he ain't changing his voice much.
Yeah, and I feel like he's kind of dressed similar. Like he's not wearing a suit jacket, but still, it's like Coker and Buck get stuck in the muck. That rhymes. And they get stuck in the dirt and they have to dig the car out, so they miss their mark by like 5 minutes, or not even 5 minutes, it's just a couple of minutes.
Right.
But because they're not there to take out the cover guy for the bag man, when he shows up and walks into the bank, that guy shoots Luther when he goes out to put some of the money in the armored car. So Luther gets killed. McRose and Hackett blow that guy away.
We have the bulk of the sheriff's department plus the ranger going out to the explosion site.
Yes.
And then he flips around as he's coming back.
Jack is on his way back to town.
Right.
And just happens to pass Coker and Buck after they've left the bank.
Correct.
After Luther gets killed. So they just happen to pass him and he sees them driving crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns around and follows them, but he doesn't know what's going on. I mean, they've probably had reports of shots fired outside the bank.
And the fact that they try to fit that car down the alley with that truck sitting there. Why would you even...
I feel like if they would have known that truck was, I feel like they turned to the alley and it's like, oh fuck, there's a truck, and then it was just like, bang! And they just kind of get doinked in there. But again, another little bit of character development is they're stuck and they know Jack's like right behind them and he's coming for them. Coker pulls his gun out and he's like, no, fuck it, I'm gonna shoot this guy so we can get the fuck out of here. And Buck stops him, grabs his arm and pushes it down. He's like, put the goddamn gun down, soldier.
Yep.
So that's Buck not being mercenary, basically. That's him being a soldier. And that's him being like, no, you're not going to shoot a fucking Texas Ranger. What's wrong with you?
If I remember correctly, doesn't it because he cocks his shotgun, he's pointing it at the window, doesn't he raise his hand and say something like, you got me, Ranger, or something to that effect?
Yep. He's like, oh yeah, it's us, Ranger. Same old saying. And so he's kind of trying to appeal to his familiarity with him, even though I don't think they interacted before this. So
no.
That might have been part of the big 45-minute purge. Who
True.
knows? So the other 3 members of the team get away. Buck and Coker get arrested. Jack questions them at the jail. And then while they're there, the real info on Luther, on Buck, and on Coker comes through from whatever source. So that's when they all realize, like, wait a minute, these two got themselves thrown in jail yesterday. all three of them are supposed to be dead.
Mm-hmm. Now, you would think when they were arrested the first time, they would have been fingerprinted, and those fingerprints would have been submitted for records that should have hit the first time they got arrested.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's like,
I was going to say they had Luther's, but the only reason they had Luther's prints is because he was dead.
Dead, right? But the other two got popped the first time because they had to get bailed out. They're going to run your prints. It should have come back that they were deceased.
Yeah, well, I mean, they probably used CIA magic or something. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too hard into this, but
that's what we do. So Larry, McRose, and Biddle are out in the desert, basically hiding, and they're outside the truck and they're talking, and they have kind of a bit of a heart-to-heart too.
I love this scene too because there's like, because he's like, Larry B. Scott essentially says, I don't remember the exact wording, but he got killed in Texas. He shouldn't have died. Luther shouldn't have died in Texas.
Yeah, he says,
what are we doing here?
We're not in Pakistan. We're not in Honduras. We're in fucking Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, my buddy's in a body bag.
Why are we doing this? At this point, I think they're really starting to question the legitimacy of this mission.
Yeah, and I love the back and forth with them too. And Clancy Brown basically says, he's like, Command should have never put us in that position. And Clancy Brown says, Command always puts us in that position. What do you think we're here for? Yeah, like, this is what we do. They give us the shit sandwich, and it's our job to eat it. Like,
to eat it.
We have to make this shit work.
Cook them up and stick them in a meat grinder.
And he's not happy about it, you can tell, but he has to accept it, and just like, this is where we are.
Yeah, it's called embracing the suck. I mean,
yep.
It's terrible, but we got to do it anyhow. But Biddle he's right. He's like, why are we doing this in Texas?
Yeah.
That should be a big red flag for the whole team, but anyhow.
Well, and Biddle's really just confirming what McRose has felt like since the beginning of this op.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something's not right. So he's just kind of biding his time until he finds out more.
Correct.
Jack also gets the call from the FBI or the CIA or whoever telling what the actual etymology of the bullets are, the bullet casings, and so he realizes that Ralston has lied to him.
Well, also, he tells his subordinate to what is he, FBI or whatever, he asks them to call their personnel office.
Yeah, that's when he gets the info back, he's like, wait, then that guy just damn well lied to him. So then he calls the personnel office and he hangs up and he's like, never heard of him. DEA's never fucking heard of the guy.
Right.
So now he knows that guy was full of shit. So now he's putting more pieces to the puzzle together.
Mm-hmm.
Jack leaves, tells him to guard those two guys with a shotgun. Jack goes home, and Hackett is there waiting for him, watching a boxing match.
I am surprised Hackett didn't get shot when he walked in the house. But hey,
he basically tells Jack the situation, the whole mission, that they're after Cash Bailey, that Cash has taken Sarita back down to Mexico, and he makes a deal with Jack and says, look, just give me back my men. All of us, including you, will go down to Mexico. We'll get what we need from Cash Bailey, and then he's all yours.
Yep.
Like, we don't have to eliminate him, basically. That's the deal that he's making, is that you get your lady back, you get your friend back, we get what we need, everybody's happy.
In fact, isn't that when he says he wants 30 minutes alone with him?
Yeah.
He says, you can have your 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'll give you 30 minutes before we move in.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack makes the deal, and he goes back to the jail. He tells Buck and Coker, call your boss, we're going to Mexico, and the game is on.
And they get on that awesome bus.
Yeah, they take a Mexican bus ride down to Mexico.
It reminds me of the buses that was in Romancing the Stone when they were driving down. That's all I could picture is like...
Young Wagner? I love this bus ride, though, because you get a lot of back and forth with all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And you get Jack and Major Hackett kind of talking a little bit. Jack gets a little bit of background on Sergeant McRose, and Hackett basically tells him what a badass he is. And he's like, that's not your average everyday soldier. You put that guy out after sundown, and you'll find him in the morning with a fresh pile of ears drinking orange juice.
Right. He even says something to the effect of, you're going to watch these guys. It's like artwork.
Yeah.
Watching these guys work.
And at that time, you didn't look at it. There wasn't this huge deluge of like special forces stuff everywhere.
Mm-mm.
Navy SEALs that wasn't a common everyday thing that people talked about.
Right.
And you had Green Berets and things like that, but it wasn't as in pop culture as it is now.
Right. And you can even say, you could thank essentially Rambo for that, because they kind of brought the Special Forces soldier into vogue.
Yeah.
And it kind of moved forward from there.
Rambo set the stage as, and to, I mean, not taking anything away from it, obviously, but Rambo he's the cartoony version of that.
Sure.
So I feel like what you just said, like that kind of like ninjas were a real thing in feudal Japan. 80s ninjas became this, like, to the nth degree of what ninjas actually were.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, they have like ninja magic, you know? I feel like Rambo had like special forces magic.
It's a good way of putting it. Because if I remember correctly, wasn't this movie wasn't the script floating around since like 75, 76? And
he wrote this early in his career. It was definitely like mid 70s, yeah.
And like you said, you are exactly right. You don't, again, there was no emphasis on spec op guys back then. And so I could see where he was going with watching Masters of the Art going to war. I mean, I could see where he's going with this. And I guess it kind of crept back into the script.
Buck's great little soliloquy about, you know what it is, man? I think we're heroes. Only things are so damn messed up now. Nobody knows what's right and what's wrong. So you got your country and you got your buddies, and that's it. You know, so you do what you think is right, and that's all you got.
And that sentiment is exactly right. Even today, that is exactly right.
Well, it's really prescient. I mean, you got to feel for anybody that's in that situation, because things are so screwed up right now. And politically and ideally or ideologically, nobody knows what's right and what's wrong. All you can do is go with what you feel is right and wrong. Not to get too deep or anything. I'm not going to start chanting, but
I wouldn't think so. But
that plays into drink this granola smoothie. And that plays into his character, because he does do what he feels is the right thing later on when they're in the hacienda, and he warns Jack that we got orders to shoot your ass on sight. It's not the right thing to do from a soldier standpoint, because he's disobeying orders, but it's the right thing to do.
Right, morally, it's the right thing to do.
It is Independence Day. They make reference to, I'm assuming, Cinco de Mayo.
I would think so, yeah.
Which would mean it's May in Mexico.
Oh boy.
Some of these guys are wearing fucking jackets.
Right.
And it's at Cash's private village mission hacienda, whatever this thing is.
Mm-hmm. Well, this whole movie was filmed in Texas. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, not too far from, I think, San Antonio. So I could see that, because it can get chilly down. Well, depending on when they were filming, it obviously was not May 5th. But
at night it can, but in the daytime, it's fucking hot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is a very sweaty movie.
Mm.
A sweat being a character in a movie. Like, everybody is sweaty in this film.
Oh, when he's walking down to the hacienda, if you look at the back of his shirt, it's soaked through. Yeah. It's completely soaked through.
Everybody's soaked in this, glistening,
shiny.
Yeah, like they just crawled out of a pool of water. And so there's this big celebration going on, and everybody's drinking and putting off fireworks. And Special Forces team talks in their hotel room, I guess.
It's very conveniently located where they can do recon right on the area they need to attack. But hey,
yeah, they literally open up the windows and they're like, "Okay, let me just look around with binoculars. This doesn't look suspicious at all." He's like, Twin 30. North upper quadrant, Twin 30, southern quadrant. We'll have to take those out first. And so literally their plan isn't just to kill Cash Bailey, it's to take those machine gun nests and then just mow everybody down.
I guess. I mean, why not just have a guy who's a sniper and put him on the roof? I mean, Cash made absolutely no effort to conceal or hide himself.
Yeah.
You could have had a guy sitting up there with a Springfield and just pop him in the head. Game over.
Yeah. Or you've got an explosives expert. Why not bring some C4 that you use for the hydrogen truck? And here, newsflash, if you've got a truck full of hydrogen, you don't need all those bombs.
No.
You just need one. You could have used a fucking book of matches for that thing.
Right.
Why not just blow up the town? If you're going to try to just mow everybody down anyway. It was kind of a loose plan.
Yeah. Well, then again, he wanted... Well, maybe blowing it up wasn't such a great idea, considering A, he wants the money, and B, doesn't he want the ledgers there?
Yeah, he just wants the ledger. So that's when Hackett tells them our mission objectives have changed. It's now extermination with extreme prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's your title movie scene where it's like, ha ha, they said it. And then as soon as he says that is when Larry's like, very unusual, ordering the termination of a civilian peace officer, clearly loyal to his country, and in the process of bringing a known felon to justice.
And you can see the reaction of some of the other guys in the room. They don't want to do this.
Yeah. Well, and Hackett has a standoff with Biddle too, because Biddle's right. Yeah, you're right, sir. It sucks. And he gets right in his face, and I love that scene too, where he's like, "We all miss Fry. I miss Fry. Remember that, you little fuck," and just kind of owns him in the corner.
Right. That is not how you inspire your troops when you're about to go into combat. No.
That's when he loses the locker room, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Jack walks down to meet with Bailey and Sarita. They all sit down at a table. They're drinking tequila, and it's kind of an awkward scene.
Yeah, and I almost find this scene is almost unnecessary. They could have cut this entire scene out just for timing, because it really drags the movie at this point.
It does. It grinds it to a halt, and you end up with the same thing as if it was just like, hey, let's just cut right to the shit.
Right.
And it's almost like they had to have Cash. He had to basically be enough of a villain for her to be like, you know what? I don't like you anymore. I'm going to go with Jack. Like,
when the other guy walks in.
Oh, and he blows him away, yeah.
And he just shoots him in the head. I mean, right there would tell you, this, maybe I don't want to be with this guy.
Yeah, he blows away his accountant or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's when she's just like, you're crazy. You've gone crazy. I don't want to be with you. And literally, like, makes her decision. So then it's like, oh, okay, well, all right, well, then we'll go have a gunfight, and then we'll see who gets you, And that's when they kind of pass her around like a commodity. And it's the biggest problem I have with this movie is that, and that they treat her like a pet almost.
I guess, or are they taking the damsel in distress to the nth degree?
Yeah, I think it's that, but I think it's also like the competition between them, like fighting over a girl. Like you said, it's very high school.
Yeah.
It's very like, oh, she can't be with me, then nobody gets her, and it's like, I don't know. And maybe that harkens back to like the old Westerns and stuff.
Definitely.
It doesn't hold up well.
But I mean, especially if you want to look at this through the lens of a Western, you're right. I can totally, the only thing missing was the train.
Yeah. So the Special Forces team moves through the crowd because Hackett tells them, use the crowd cover to make your way up there.
Now, I'm sorry, you have, 5, 6 obviously American guys walking through a crowd in Mexico. They are going to stick out like sore thumbs.
With guns.
Right. It's like, yeah, no one's going to notice this.
Biddle gets a hooker, woman of the night, whatever, a call girl, a party girl that's partying, takes her to a room. We see Hackett meet with Merv, who is Cash Bailey's drop man / other accountant, I guess, his books guy.
Yep.
Another character actor.
John Dennis Johnson. I've seen him in a ton of stuff. I just didn't know his name.
He always plays like a thug or like a bad guy or something. Yeah, he's always a heavy. And this is one of the last things I remember seeing him in. He was in a lot of stuff like Clint Eastwood movies and stuff like that. But meets with him. They obviously know each other. So that's when you get the reveal that Hackett is working with Cash. Through their dialogue, and he wants the ledgers, and he's like, oh, I can't give you that, that's the only copy, and Cash would get real pissed. And he's like, he's my partner, I trust me, I need these, I want to protect him, I want to protect me. So that's when you fully get that Hackett is a slime ball, and he's sold his men out to die. Buck meets with Jack at the bar and tips him off that it's open season on him.
Yep.
And then he goes and grabs a hooker. or just a female in this village, I guess. I don't know.
When in Rome.
When in Rome, grab a girl and go to a room. Very Old West, like, hey, you're coming with me, little lady.
The saloon workers, I guess you could, I could see that. I mean,
they're village party girls, I guess.
Right.
McRose comes across Hackett after Hackett has stabbed Merv and wiped his blood off his hands, and he's getting the money or the ledgers or whatever he's got, and McRose basically surprises him, and he's holding him at gunpoint.
Yep.
And they have their conversation, tells him, come with me, we'll split this money, done all this killing for our country, now it's time for us to ride off into the sunset. And McRose is just not having it, and he's like, you got those orders yourself and set us all up to die.
Yep, you sold us out. And I totally get where he was coming from. He should have just, blew him in half right there.
Yeah.
And not even thought about it, but, plot.
Jack and Cash are about to have their showdown.
Back to back, 6 paces, turn and shoot.
Cowboy style, draw! McRose and Hackett having their standoff congruently. Somebody comes in and they open the door and it interrupts them, and then they shoot those guys, and then all the shooting starts basically.
Right, that's the catalyst for it.
Yeah, and that's when we get the huge Wild Bunch inspired shootout.
It's one of the coolest shootouts I've ever seen.
Have you seen the Wild Bunch yet?
No, not yet.
I know we've talked about it, but this is an homage to that.
Okay.
And Walter Hill was a assistant DP or something like that. He was a crew member on the Wild Bunch.
So this is like his homage to that, or
this was his homage to Sam Peckinpah. Yeah.
Because in the interview I saw with him, Sam, I can never pronounce his name, Peckinpah. Him and Walter Hill were not only were they friends, but he was like a mentor to Hill. Though he speaks with him with such reverence in this interview, it's actually kind of fascinating. A reverence, and almost is like, well, as he puts it, he's like, I'm down here and you're up here, and I'll never meet you up here. Sam essentially said, no, that's not true. You are up here, but you just don't realize it. You're a much better director than you think you are.
And Peckinpah's legendary. I mean, he's one of the first rock star action directors. I mean, he did The Wild Bunch. He did Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. He did Convoy, kind of one of his worst movies, I guess.
He did Convoy? Wow.
A very specific style. And he was one of the first stylized action directors that I can think of. Yeah, you should look into his stuff. He did some good ones. But The Wild Bunch was it was the first Western to ever show blood.
Really?
Like Tarantino even made that a line in From Dusk Till Dawn when George Clooney says, I will turn this place into the fucking Wild Bunch.
Mm-hmm.
The gunfight at the end of this movie times 6.
Good Lord. Okay, now I have to see this because this was crazy.
But this had a lot more cuts and a lot more angles to this gunfight. The one in the Wild Bunch is a lot more linear, and you kind of follow. It's less people, and you kind of follow the action a little bit easier.
Okay.
With this, there's so much going on. So the shooting starts. Biddle shooting from his room. McRose busts in there, tells him what's going on, and he's like, "We hunt the major." Kill him like a fucking animal.
Yep.
And they're trying to kill him. Everybody else is trying to kill Buck and Coker. Literally get on both of those machine gun nests like they're supposed to. And McRose and Biddle would be on the other two, and they're just mowing guys down. I mean, there's so much carnage in this, and everybody dies basically.
Yeah, those 30 calibers, man, it would be chewing shit up.
Oh yeah.
And
Twin 30s, just endless bullets, if you will. They kill Hackett. He ends up in a fountain or whatever. Monday gets shot by Jack.
Yep.
He gets 2 in the fucking shoulders and still gets up and grabs Biddle and picks him up by his neck, assumingly breaks his neck. McRose gets blown away by some of the Cash's army, and both Coker and Buck get killed by the members of the army. So all of the special forces guys are dead at this point.
Yep.
The smoke is cleared. Cash comes back in a truck or whatever with some of his men. I guess they had retreated. And him and Jack have their showdown. And this drags out a little bit longer than it should too.
Oh yeah.
A lot of talking after the shots.
Yeah.
It's like he shoots him a couple times and it's like, give it up. I'll take you home. Just give it up. And he's like, I can't. Don't you see? I'm in too deep. So he has to kill his friend. Jack wins. Cash is dead.
And that's when the other guy, the guy, the Pancho Villa looking dude,
Lupo,
takes the white hat. And I like what he says. He's like, we're in business for ourselves now.
No more working for gringos.
Yep. And oddly, not Biddle, Benton is okay with this.
Oh, Well, he just wants to leave. And
Hmm.
the guy tells him, he's like, well, I'll let you live and you guys can leave if you do me a favor. And Jack's like, no deal. I already did you a favor. You get to wear the white hat now. He's like, oh, you know what? You're right. Cool.
Bye.
So him and Sarita leave and they walk off into the distance.
Roll credits.
Roll credits. And the end music here is some of my favorite music from a film ever. And it's called The Deal by Jerry Goldsmith. And you can find it on YouTube isolated. And
Really?
it is
Okay.
just beautiful.
I listened to it because I watched through the credits on my last walk through, and you're right, it is a beautiful song. Going back just a second though, I noticed something when Coker dies, when he takes out the machine gun nest, he's using an AK-47.
Yes.
It's the only time we ever see one in the entire movie.
Yeah. Well, it's the first time the only time we see this M16 M203 when Buck shoots it too. He shoots a couple of grenades.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just stuck out for me when I was watching it. I'm like, where? Because it's all, so far as for the most part, been American equipment. I'm like, where did this thing come from? Did the
No, he picked that up. Like he was basically, I feel like both of them ran those 30s dry and just mowing guys down, and then they were just grabbing reclaimed weapons off of dead guys.
Right. And
so they were just like, hey, I'll grab this, you know. And
Benton's 1911 is gorgeous.
It's nice. It's actually a 9mm.
Oh, it's a 9. Okay.
It's a 1911, but it's chambered for 9. You can tell by the barrel size.
Yep. And it's just something I noticed. It's a beautiful looking firearm.
Yeah, it's got some custom grips on it, and I can't make out what they are. They're textured.
Usually, I don't get into highly detailed firearms like that, but this one just stuck out to me because it's a beautiful gun. Sorry.
Well, it looks like an older 1911, so maybe like it was his dad's.
Okay.
The grips really make it cool, and I can't fucking make out what they are, and it drives me nuts. I want to say they're like a tree bark motif, like a mammoth bark is what it's called, like a staghorn or something like that. But it looks really old. Like they look like really old.
I mean, it's patinaed.
Yeah.
At least part of it. When Cash puts it in his pocket, you can really see the. So, anyways.
So that's the movie. Now it's time for bullet points. My favorite parts. These are tropes or cliches or both. Sometimes it's just things that I notice about a film. I mentioned it earlier, but people wearing sweaters and jackets in hot climates. It drives me insane because I'm a native Floridian. I live in Florida now. I can't imagine, it's May here right now, it's almost June. I can't imagine walking outside, even right now at night, in any kind of jacket or sweater. Within 2 minutes, I would be sweating bullets.
Oh, I feel you. I live up in Michigan. In the next couple of days, it's going to be in the 90s.
Yeah.
There's no way I would walk around in a jacket, especially in Texas. I did my basic in Texas, and it was in the 90s in April.
Yeah.
So,
Texas is a different kind of hot, too.
It is.
Biddle is wearing jackets. Hackett wears jackets. McRose wears a denim jacket almost the entire film.
Right.
With the sleeves rolled up, but still, it's still a fucking jacket. And I mean, these guys would be roasting in that stuff. At one point, Bill is wearing a sweater and a jacket.
Yes. And Cash never takes off his jacket. Nope. Never once.
Nope.
So,
and I get it. I mean, you'll see movies all the time with people being in like LA in the summertime and they're wearing fucking jackets. And it's like, no. Nobody does that.
It's 105. I'm going to wear my leather out today.
And I know why a lot of films do that is that jackets hide a lot. They hide physiques, they hide microphones,
squibs.
I mean, I get it, but it's jarring to see how fucking hot it would be in people wearing sweaters and jackets. Bullet point number 2, the double cross. And that's a trope going back, I mean, as far back as film goes, but especially with old westerns, it's a very often used trope. Like we talked about earlier, you don't necessarily see it coming with the way that they edited this film. You kind of get an idea that maybe not everything's right, but you don't really get the sense that Hackett is evil until that reveal.
Right. They do it well in this movie too, because you're right, you don't see it coming, but
you can always look at what he's doing and how driven he is he's compelled, and he's like hyper focused on getting this guy and getting this mission done. Maybe it makes him a villain, but it's also you're still kind of on their side. You're on his side where it's like, well, he's just trying to get the job done. He's just, he's taking his orders and blah blah blah. But once you see that he's in league with Cash, then it's like, oh shit,
Right.
like now everything is, and I mean things go downhill fast from there too. It's like,
it does. They kind of hint at it, I guess, a little bit with, like when he orders the peace officer to be killed. You realize at this point he's not on the up and up, but you're not sure how far down the slide he's gone.
Yeah. So bullet point number 3, the 80s synthesizer score.
I love 80s synthesizers. I do. I love it.
I do too. This isn't a negative, but it is very 1987.
Oh, sure.
The
Did you get a sense of a little Miami Vice in here?
Definitely a little bit of, Miami Vice influenced everything around this time.
Sure.
I also picked up on this score. Watch this movie or listen to this score and then listen to the score from Total Recall.
Okay.
They are very similar. You don't get that horn, that Mexican horn, whenever they blend.
It's been a while since I've seen Total Recall. I have to go back and check this out.
So he definitely cannibalized himself a little bit on that. But it's such an effective score, I think. And it perfectly marries the 80s synth military drum beat march, and then the that Mexican kind of folk music.
But this one, it really pops out.
Bullet point number 4, and I had to kind of self-reflect a little bit on this one because I do love this film, but the Invincible Hero. And it really became apparent to me, not only in the ending gunfight where everybody gets fucking shot, except Jack.
Right.
And he's right there in the middle of the shit, too. Like, Cash hauls ass, but Jack is right there because he shoots Monday twice.
Mm-hmm.
And some other guys, too. So he's in the middle of the shit with his pistol. But also, when Hank dies, they drive right past him, shooting at him with automatic weapons. Kind of duck and covers.
He never even gets a scratch through this whole movie.
No scratch, no flesh wound, no graze. And I have a little bit of a problem with that because with everybody else getting shot to shit in this movie multiple times, and with all the squib work, the beautiful squib work that they had going on, he should have at least gotten hit once. just putting that out there.
I don't even think his shirt got dirty.
Yeah, his shirt doesn't even get untucked.
Or wrinkled.
So things like that bother me in movies, but he's the only example of it because everybody else gets theirs, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And bullet point number 5, the love triangle. Gotta have it.
Yeah, this one I think was kind of poorly done. I've seen better love triangles in movies that actually work.
One thing I will say about this is when it comes to love triangles, this is a very poor one, but when it comes to chemistry between male actors and female actors, or just actors in general, you can always tell when actors have zero chemistry.
Sure.
She has zero chemistry with either one of these guys. Like, Powers Booth and Nick Nolte have great chemistry. You believe that those guys used to be friends and that they still want to be friends. Both of their interactions with Maria, like there's a pane of glass between them.
I can see that. And even with, like, when she was in Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Running Man.
Or, sorry, not Total Recall, Running Man. That worked. They were, okay, you're right, their chemistry between the two, especially the scene on the bus.
Yeah.
But here, it just falls flat. Or am I reading it wrong? It just...
Oh, absolutely. They literally act like they just met that day. Even when she's in the shower and they're supposed to, it's like, oh, and they're like fighting or whatever. Like, they don't even fight like people that know each other. When you're an actor, like, I know I say that sometimes, like, oh, when you're an actor, let me tell you all about it. But I have done some acting, so there's my qualification. It's one of the hardest things to do is to convince everybody that sees what you're doing, your performance, that it's real. I mean, they know that they're watching a movie, they know that they're watching an actor, but if you can make the person forget that they're not in a relationship, and when you don't do a good job of that, and sometimes it's not the actor's fault, they just don't have chemistry, like they just don't like each other. Sometimes it's jarring, but when you don't believe the performance, it hurts the movie because you don't believe that she would be like, oh, you know what, screw you, I'm going to go hang out with Powers Booth because we have great chemistry.
Right.
Like, no, I mean, she literally, every scene that they're in together, she acts like she's terrified of him.
And terrified of him, and she's almost flippant with Nick Nolte. It's like,
Yeah, she acts like she doesn't want to be with him. Like,
right.
So, yeah.
Again, it's like a high school, almost like a high school love triangle is what it reminded me of.
The way that they frame it in this movie, it's like they're the only two fucking guys that she has to choose from.
Well, if she's a singer in a bar, I think she could probably find someone else, but
You can tell, and I mean this with all the respect in the world to both John Milius and Walter Hill, but you can tell men wrote and made this movie. Yeah, she's there as a mechanism to have them have something to fight over.
What is it called? A MacGuffin? Is she a living MacGuffin?
Sort of, yeah. She's the love interest MacGuffin. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Final parting thoughts on Extreme Prejudice.
Definitely worth a view. If you've never seen this before or never heard of it, like initially I never had, it is definitely worth a watch through at least once, because like we mentioned earlier, it's not a Western, it's not a military movie, it's just its own thing. Granted, flaws aside, it's its own thing. The soundtrack is incredible, like you said, and it's worth a watch because it's so unique.
Well, it's not a military movie and it's not a Western, but it has those elements.
Right.
Yeah. It has those ingredients, but it's not either of those things independently.
You could even say it even has parts of a heist movie. It's so unique. You're right. I don't even know how I would classify it. I guess most people call it a modern Western.
Yeah. And I feel like that's mostly because of the setting.
Right. I mean, you could do this movie in downtown LA.
Right. If you do that, then it changes everything, because then he's not a Texas Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's just a sheriff or whatever. And you could still have the Mexican element, because you could shoot this in San Diego and then you've still got the Mexican element.
Right.
Yeah. Modern action movie.
Right. It wouldn't be a Western. If this wasn't set in Texas, right on the border, it wouldn't be a Western. Yep. Although no horses, I don't think. And no horses at all, were there?
I don't think so.
I was trying to think maybe in
rare.
Right.
It's rare for a movie shot in Texas. Yeah, I don't think anybody says yeehaw.
No.
But we do get the one guy that's like, "You boys is terrorists, ain't you?"
Yeah. Well, even in the Mexico scene, there's no horses. Granted, they're hooping and hollering because they're having a party, but yeah, right. There is no yeehaw.
Yeah, I love this one. Despite its flaws, despite the problematic things in it, I feel like it's one of the best action movies of the 80s, with no pre-qualification there. It's not the best action movie of the 80s you've never heard of. You can put this up there with the very best action movies of the 80s.
That's a bold statement. So we're going up with Rambo or Predator.
I put this in the same caliber as Predator, as The Terminator, as Commando, name any of them.
Yeah, this would definitely make my top 10. Because like I said, until you mentioned it, I had never heard of this movie before. It's a well-directed movie. Action movies from that time frame, they were almost cookie cutter, wouldn't you say?
Or even something like The Running Man just came out the same year. It's a great action movie. Is it better than this?
No.
Right.
No.
And that's where I settle on it, where it's like, you know what? This is one of my favorite action movies because it's so good.
And The Running Man has Richard Dawson. I mean, come on now.
And I love The Running Man. And same thing with Rambo. I mean, with First Blood, Part 2. I mean, Rambo 3, very good action movie. Is it better than this?
No.
It's up there, and it's a shame that more people haven't seen it. It did just come out on 4K Blu-ray.
Yep, I picked it up.
I pre-ordered mine. It just came out this week, and you can find it at Walmart. I believe it's $12.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got mine on Amazon for $11. It was like $11.
Yep. And it's well worth it. The transfer is beautiful, because I own this movie on 3 different mediums. And the only way to watch this movie for the longest time, it was grainy, and they were either rips or it was just a bare bones DVD, and it looked old. It looked like it was from like the early 70s.
Right.
But they cleaned up that print so nice.
Yeah. The colors pop, and the sound design is really good. So, I mean, when you start hearing the bullets hit like on the cars in the first gunfight, it just pops. And I don't have like a fancy surround sound system. I'm just using the speakers out of my TV. So I don't want to know what this thing is going to sound like if I hook it up to a nice surround sound system.
Yeah, It's a great one. So if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. Anything you would like to plug?
Nothing major. Like,
What do you guys got coming up on Three Geeks?
unfortunately, we are kind of on a hiatus until August. Just life got in the way. Like I said, I moved. The two other Art and Russ, two guys I with, they got stuff going on. They were both had COVID, so we kind of put on a hiatus until August. But I do know our first episode coming back, we're doing a review of No Way Out with Kevin Costner.
Oh, nice. It's a good one.
So,
Great thriller.
yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. And would you be willing to come back on the show?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Having you on there, it's fun having you on there because you have such a unique opinion on things. But yeah, please, we can be found on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Three Geeks and a Microphone. You can always tell it's us because our logo looks like World War II pinup art. But
Three Geeks and a Microphone. Yeah, it's a great little podcast. I think we did, what did we do? Top Gun. I did House with you guys.
Yeah, I did Top Gun, House. You did a bunch with us.
So it's a good show. You guys should check it out.
Thank you.
And if you guys listening have not heard, Iconicon is coming. Iconicon 2022, June 29th through July 3rd. And we've got some great stuff lined up.
Nice.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but you guys take it easy and lock and load. We will see you on the next one.
Will do. Thank you, Matt.